Good afternoon, everybody. My apologies for being a moment behind today, but we will get fired up in just a second. But what we want to talk about a little bit today is CIS as a starting point for cyber liability prep. So I'm going to just give a couple folks another moment to join in here. And while we're doing that, if you are new to attending our Tuesday coaching events, every Tuesday we run different coaching sessions around different principles around being a VCIO and VCISO, so you can better attack the marketplace, get connected with your customer, and kind of help shape your office of VCIO within your business as well. I apologize myself for being a couple moments late. But good news from my seat to share in regards to why that was. For those of you that have been tracking some of our social media, you may have known we were VCIO Toolbox was invited into this year's ConnectWise Pitch It Emerging Vendor Cohort, if you will, competition, and we came in the final three. So today was the big announcement just prior to this meeting that we were named one of the top three finalists out of a group of 27 different emerging vendors. And if you're coming down to ConnectWise IT Nation in November, you'll get to hear our pitch live. So a little self-promotion there, I know, but that is some good news coming out of our realm. And if you've been following us on social, hopefully that kind of brings it full circle. But now we'll move into what we're really here to talk about today. And, today we're going to talk a little bit about CIS. I'm a big fan of the CIS framework for companies that are not under any regulatory compliance requirements and are just looking to build a cyber program. Part of the reason I won't say I prefer CIS versus CSF because they each have a little bit of a different spin on things. But one of the things I like about CIS or the CIS is it really looks at the small company and kind of is positioned an assessment that meets their needs. And one of the things that really came to be as we looked at that is it also seems to tie to many of the questions that come up on the various carrier liability forms that you need to fill when you're looking for cyber liability insurance. So I figured we'd take a moment today and kind of dig into that a little bit, take a look at what's included in level one, and really, kind of get a sense of how you can utilize that with your customers. So, if you're wondering, if you guys aren't familiar with the CIS, although I think most of you have definitely, from conversations I've had with you, understand that, it's just a nice, easy, simplified way to make sure that you're managing security best practices and policies for your organization. It looks at organizations based on kind of their complexity as opposed to kind of a one-size-fits-all process. One of the big differentiators, though, that NIST CSF has that is not as embedded into the CIS, at least in the implementation group number one level, is incident response and incident planning. It really looks more at it from a proactive defense, kind of the left of boom look at it before, heading into the right of boom response. So, that's kind of where that sits a little bit, and we'll go a little bit deeper into that. Now, if you're not familiar with the CIS, there's 18 different domains within the CIS version 8 that you can look at. These critical security controls hit most of the things you'd expect them to. You notice here you've got things around inventory. Obviously, that's kind of the foundation for good cyber hygiene. Then it really goes into protection and configuration and access control. And then you start getting into kind of the operational layer. How are you managing things from an operational position, vulnerability management, log management, malware defense. So, and as you can see here, it does go into incident response management, but certainly not at the depth you'll see within the NIST CSF. So, that's a little bit there. The controls are actually referred to as safeguards. So if you're working with people that are speaking CIS lingo, you might hear them refer to safeguards. And as you can see by this image here, this image, by the way, is available to you in the marketing section in VCIO Toolbox. So if you want to upload it as an image into custom reports, you can do so. It really does a good job of explaining kind of what the core is. And as you can see, it's looking at both internal and external threats. Now, how it relates to our world is, it really, this implementation group number one, which we're going to focus on today, is really the one that speaks to most of the people we serve. So if you look here, it basically talks about the fact that there's 3 implementation groups and there's a total of 153 safeguards across 18 different controls. And as we move into implementation group number 1, there we isolate 56 safeguards. And if you look at some of the bullet points here, you'll see why I think this is a great one for MSPs as a starting point if they're thinking about doing some sort of, hardening of a cyber program with their customers. It's really geared to the market we tend to serve. It's under 250 employees. It's non-targeted companies. Usually they don't have staff on site. They're using standard off-the-shelf hardware. They're not using a whole lot of custom stuff. They really, but conversely is unlike some of the enterprises where they've got many, duplications of systems and other ways they can work around. Usually the small to mid-sized market just has the systems they need to operate. So as a result, they can't withstand a lot of extended downtime. So, this is a great group that probably summarizes most MSPs, 80% of their portfolio probably standing still. And it also brings a lot of the questions in around access control and things like that that really matter to the when you're filling out those cyber liability forms. So if you manage to this, you should have a good set of information you can very easily apply at cyber liability, either purchase or renewal time as well. Now, one of the things that I really like about it too is it kind of speaks to how we should be approaching the market in the security discussion. I talk a lot during a lot of sales calls that I'm on with folks about kind of their approach to selling security. And a lot of them kind of fall on the old fear, uncertainty, and doubt positioning, right? That, hey, it could happen to you, Mr. Customer. Listen about this small company that was recently breached, that kind of story. And, the reality is we want to, by building an implementation group number 1 report, you can now quantify where there's gaps and now speak more to the customer's position. Customers think they're not going to be targeted, and they're not. But there's bots, there's automation, there's everything out on the marketplace now that's, scanning for vulnerabilities within our client networks. And if they find one, they'll penetrate it. For them, it's just a roll of the dice. Who's going to pay, who's not, right? So, that's really where you find some of these smaller companies coming into concern. And the other reason it's important, as we talk and relate to it in cyber liability is cyber liability and risk are 2 things that are going hand in hand, even when you have a cyber liability policy these days. I'm sure many of you have been hearing on the news that, first of all, I'm sure you've experienced firsthand, it's harder to get cyber liability insurance. But now it's also getting more audit or more proof point centric. I'm not sure how to say this appropriately, but, you can't live in the world of gray when you're putting together your response to the cyber liability company. Because at the end of the day, the cyber liability company, when you have an incident, would love to find any way that they don't have to pay, right? So, and there's even been cases that are now being brought out of like the DoD, Department of Defense and Military, and going to the DOJ because people have actually done fraud, and that's how it's being treated. If you've put in a insurance form that stated that you were at XYZ security posture and you get your claim paid, and it's then proven that you were not there, upon further forensics, not only can they make you repay the claim, they can potentially now go after you criminally because it is fraud. So these are new considerations that never existed for us even 5 years ago as MSPs, at least not in our conversations with our clients or in reality. But now that reality is coming true. So, pivoting back to CIS, that's where implementation group number 1 can help you during a non-stressful time with your customer. Start prepping this information so you're ready when that cyber liability exam comes to be. Now, to just kind of bring you guys up to date on the other implementation groups, really they graduate up as size of company graduates up. You'll see here in implementation group number 2, it's really geared to the mid-market. 250 to 1,000 is how CIS classifies that. Here, there is some enterprise tech mixed in with the common off-the-shelf technologies. There's some customization going on. They might have an IT team that's responsible across multiple departments, but they don't necessarily, but they might not have a security team on site. They also start getting into the point now where there's different departments or sites that might have different risk profiles and tolerance. So many of you know we just added risk management into the platform. This gives you an opportunity to kind of analyze that a little bit as well and say, hey, which department, can we build a risk kind of determination plan for each one of the departments if they don't look universal or global, and make sure that we're managing those departments to that risk. So this gives you an opportunity to kind of start uncovering some of that. And one of the biggest concerns when you're in implementation group number 2 is if you have a breach, your company might lose, or have a loss in public confidence, right? This is the old reputation risk standpoint. It may materially change your income to your company. It may change your perception. You may lose customers if you don't have the right controls and you're at this size. I mean, that can happen at any layer, but it seems to happen at the mid-market because there's always that question, are they really ready for us, right? And I see some QAs coming in. Steve, glad to see you here today as well. So I appreciate you joining us. Again, guys, if anybody has any questions, please jump into the I'm actually going to open up the chat. I always forget to do this, but you can drop things in the chat or you can drop things into Q&A. So perfect. And it's great to see you, Steve. So now we get into implementation group number 3, and this is really as you get into the enterprise, right? They've got security experts that might be helping with their business. So they're looking at, kind of the red and blue teams of life and building those strategies out. They need regulatory compliance as part of their organization. They need to care, we all care about zero-day attacks, but zero-day attacks may be really important to them because quite frankly, and that last bullet point there is the one I think about. These are the companies that these are the companies that are serving us, our hospitals, our military, units, the people that are part of defense, part of first line of response, part of healthcare, that if something happens, it could significantly harm the public welfare. So, this is part of, these are the considerations that CIS has taken into level 3. Our implementation group number 3, you can certainly do a number 3 assessment with any of your customers. But again, they were kind of built out to meet the need of each customer unit individually. Now, that being said, I got another question here in implementation group number 1. What is COTS technology? That's just a short abbreviation for common off-the-shelf technology. So that would be the standard, Fortinet or Sonic wall firewalls you sell, the standard Dell servers and things like that we sell to our customers. It's not, large storage network arrays with custom networking. It's not applications and systems where you might have coders building into it. It's stuff that the average business person can buy very easily through the commercial and retail markets. So that's what COT stands for. I apologize if that didn't come out clearly. So thank you for that question. And it's also a great point, play CIS, if you're looking to build a vCISO program within your organization. So as many of you know, we launched GRC in our platform probably getting close to a year ago now, in its current state. And we've seen a lot of MSPs using this as a great opportunity to build new revenue streams for their business. Some of my top performing MSPs are now building compliance as a service or vCISO as a service engagements with their customer and building monthly recurring fees on top of original fees with customers in excess of $3,000 to $5,000 a month. Now, there's downloads in our marketing section if you want to get more detail into what goes into a full vCISO program. We've also covered that in coaching in the past, so definitely take a look for those videos. But, if you start thinking about it, it's really, the vCISO's role is to help you review, understand, and create any policies or procedures that are needed. The vCISO needs to look at the architecture of the security tools that they're leveraging and make sure that those security tools are supporting the need of their business. And then ultimately, they've got to be part of the audit process to make sure the checks and balances are in place and that a technology plan of action is being built for your security requirements. So, by building that new revenue stream, you can really help your customers fill the gaps where they don't have that expertise today. And certainly it's going to open up new opportunities for you. And if you look down at that bottom point, even if you just do this as an assessment opportunity, CIS assessments start around $5,000 for an assessment and can go up to around 20 grand, for those customers that live in kind of the implementation group number 1, bottom of implementation group number 2 strata. So if you give me just a minute, I've got to pull up my my instance, and I'm going to bring up CIS. All right. So now we come into VCIO Toolbox. I go into the GRC section here. And do I have a customer that we have CIS going on? Yep. We'll go over here to Crazy Commerce. So within the platform itself, you can manage CIS very easily. If you haven't really started your GRC journey yet, you would simply pick the CIS amongst a number of different frameworks that we have available to you in the platform. Once you choose that CIS benchmark, you will come in here, click on Assess, and it should default to maturity level number 1. But if you change your maturity level, it will then move into level 2. I got another question that just came in, and I do want to address this before I go too deep in into the FTC. The FTC controls are definitely another avenue that you can take. The FTC controls, especially when we're talking about cyber liability insurance, while they're a requirement in some, for some industries, as many of you know, this new legislation went into effect June 9th of last year. From our opinion at VCIO Toolbox and looking at a lot of the insurance carrier forms that our customers have shared with us, it doesn't go deep enough to really prep for the insurance. If you're not familiar with the FTC program, and I can bring that up because it's good probably for a comparison conversation, you'll see that when I bring in the FTC safeguards rule, it's a very basic set of standards. And I have a feeling over time this will expand. Because as you can see here, there's just 16 baseline standards that are required. Now, of course, if your company's being held to that, I would definitely suggest building it out. But you can see they have a few questions around, just kind of high level, broad. Do you have the right qualified individual chop of it? Are you conducting a risk assessment? Can you show that security controls have been designated and implemented? But it doesn't define the security controls or really provide you with those security controls. Do you have current data inventory as well? As we get into the controls, they do have some controls, but it's a very scaled down version, although the more critical ones, right? Multi-factor. And then, it talks a little bit about program monitoring and program governance. It's not a bad foundation, but I have found it's a little thin. You're still going out and seeking for information if you're helping a customer, prepare for cyber liability insurance. And when I say help a customer, I mean giving them the information they need. You do not want to be the one filling out that form, because then you become part of that chain of custody for the information that's contained in there. So hopefully, David, that just gives you a little insight. A lot of my customers are doing the CIS version 1 with their clients and then using the FTC safeguards if they need to report in those safeguards to a government body for any particular reason. When we come over here to the CIS, implementation group number 1 controls, you'll see that you have 56 controls, and it does get a little bit more expansive. So it drills things a little bit deeper. We look at inventory and control at the hardware level. We look at inventory and control at the software level. We have a series of controls around data protection, not just a single control, question asking, do you have controls? So this allows us to find gaps that might not exist at the top level, but do come downstream and pose risk to the customer. And that also allows us the ability to obviously create recommendations. And, while we don't do this as a sales event per se, it is, it has sales qualities to it. It does give us the opportunity to put items in our roadmap, justifiable opportunities, but opportunities on our roadmap that later turn into projects for our customer. It digs a little bit deeper into software configuration. So it's looking at configuration on network infrastructure, assets. And that's another differentiator if you're really looking at it from the FTC perspective. They just want to know that you have secure configurations. But it's very possible you might have secure configurations on 90% of your environment, but you might not have it on a couple servers. And that does need to be isolated. And it also helps you identify exactly where and show somebody it's not a black and white yes or no. You don't have to answer no, we don't have secure configurations everywhere, and take a full penalty hit and potentially look like you're not doing secure configurations. Where implementation group number one here allows you to go, yeah, we've got 80% of our environment under control with secure configurations, and we're continuing on our journey to finishing up the rest. Much better story to tell an auditor, certainly a much better story to put through in your insurance forms as well. We've got things about account management. Do we have inventories? How do we handle passwords? Do we disable accounts so it takes that up a level? Access control, again, we're looking at a few different layers, and then so forth. We've got continuous vulnerability management, audit log management, browser protections, malware defense, and so forth. Now, you'll notice it also takes out some of the core 18 controls here as well. In implementation group number one, it doesn't call explicitly for network monitoring and defenses. It doesn't call specifically for application software security because it's going under the assumption that you're buying that elsewhere, that you're leveraging cloud-based services for those types of services that are common off-the-shelf applications and products. And it doesn't require penetration testing because oftentimes in implementation group number one, you're not hosting any applications. Certainly that's usually not the case, but you've got very little to penetrate on or very little information you might be supporting inside. A lot of that's going to things like Microsoft Cloud and other vendors as well. So, this is kind of the way the CIS approaches, and a lot of these questions cross paths with what you see in those cyber liability insurance forms. So if you do a good, thorough preparation of it at the CIS level and maintain CIS, again, you're going to be better prepared when it's time to pull the trigger on doing cyber liability. And if you ever get investigated or audited later, you will have all the backing evidence attached. You'll have your policies attached, and you'll really be able to showcase that you did what was anticipated that you do in order to better protect and support your customer. So that's really kind of, a very quick down and dirty on how the CIS level one really can help you, help your customer build a baseline security program for their organization, get ready for those cyber liability insurance reviews, and make sure that you're maintaining evidence of the controls. So should a breach happen and you get investigated, or they at least want to do due diligence before paying the claim, you would have all that information at your fingertips to share with any examiner. So with that, I'm going to open up the floor now. As you know, at the end of each one of these sessions, I'll open up the floor for an Ask Me Anything session. These questions don't need to be just about CIS or cyber liability, but really anything around the world of VCIOs, VCSOs, and client management. And certainly, love to be able to answer those questions. Any other questions beyond that? I might need to go get some help. So I'll stop talking for a moment and just give everybody a moment to see if questions are coming in. How much of NIST does CIS have? So Dave, we're in the process of doing some of the mappings, but but basically there's probably about, in the overall regulations, there's probably about a 60% to 70% overlap of questions that can directly be correlated one-to-one between implementation group number 3 and the NIST CSF. If you're looking at the NIST 800-171, it's a little bit smaller representation here because, when you look at the NIST 800-171 or the CMMC for that matter, you're really looking at things that are more about the unclassified data you're handling than some of the infrastructure points and assets. I'd love to give you an actual number when we finish our mapping project, which will then also bring automation into answering multiple programs for a single customer inside of VCIO Toolbox. I could probably do a little bit better job of answering that for you, but hopefully that gives you kind of a start. While we're waiting to see if there's any other questions, if you're new here, we do this every Tuesday. We'll pick a topic, we'll pick a subject, and certainly we're open to you submitting any subjects or topics you'd like us to cover during these coaching sessions. If you'd like to reach me directly and send those topics, please do so at bdoyle@vciotoolbox.com, and we'd be happy to get them into the rotation. we want to bring the best that we can to you. So new topics are always welcome. All right, so I'm going to give another minute for Q&A, but it looks like the queue is starting to slow down a little bit. If anybody, as I said, does want to reach me directly, please feel free to do so. If you're not a customer of ours today, please feel free to sign up for a demo or a trial at our website, vciotoolbox.com. And if there's no other questions, I'll give you a couple minutes back in your day, and I'll wish you all a great week and look forward to seeing you again next Tuesday. Thanks for stopping in.